Hello, my name is Brian Early, and today I'll be talking to you all about DDoS attack mitigation. This is for the IT organizational training class. So let's get started. So first, before we get into the DDoS mitigation, we need to understand what a DDoS attack is and the basic fundamentals of the different types of attacks. So first, a DDoS attack is a distributed denial of service. It is an attack that attempts to prevent the user from accessing a service. The attacks will send excessive packets to the target, flooding their service and making it slow down or not accessible at all. So right here, I put an image of what an attack would look like. So first we have an attacker, and of course uses the internet. Then they have their zombie computers or their botnet, whatever you like to call it, and then it attacks the target server or service, whoever it is. What this will do is it'll send so many packets or unwanted packets or anything like that at them to where they will have no ability to do anything because they're being overwhelmed on the bandwidth. So now there are three different kinds of attacks. And these are the volumetric attacks, application layer attacks, and protocol attacks. And so first we will start with the volumetric attacks. So first, this is the most common of the three. And this type of attack overwhelms the bandwidth by sending false requests to every port that is available. And this includes like ICMP floods, UDP floods. Like these are the primary types of those attacks. Like I said, there's the most common and the easiest to do, but also they're very easy to catch beforehand. Like it's very easy to see their telltale signs. Next are the application layer attacks. So these types of attacks are harder to catch, mainly because it's close. It's only on one user, and it just messes with the web traffic. So, for example, you have an employee using the service, maybe the website, and it's slowing down, but you could just blame it on, just slow internet, web traffic. But when it could also be an attack that's starting up. So, see, those are really hard to find, and this includes messes with the web traffic, SMTP, HTTP, HTTPS, and then the DNS. And the last one is the protocol attacks. So this type of attack will attack the connection tables, trying to overwhelm them. No one will be able to make connection after the connection table is filled up. The common protocol attack is the SYN flood. This SYN flood takes advantage of the three-way handshake method. So we'll be talking about it when we talk about the firewalls later, about the connection tables and how it fills it up. But basically with the SYN flood, what it'll do is it'll use the three-way handshake, which is a longer method in the first place, but it'll just make the three-way handshake take longer and then end up doing nothing. So first, let's talk about firewalls. The firewall should not be your first line of defense, and not your only line of defense. And this does happen a lot, where people will use firewalls and just think, okay, the firewall will be good enough to stop the DDoS attack. Whereas once they break through that wall, I mean, they can do whatever they want. There's nothing stopping them if you have no other methods of preventing this kind of attack. So, the firewalls are not made to comprehend millions of packets at once and know what to do. Okay, and so why can't firewalls be able to handle it? Well, the simple answer is that because the connection tables. The connection tables can normally have thousands of active connections at once on the network. This means if a DDoS attack sends thousands every second, or even more, then it will use up all the connections. This means that the normal customers won't have access. So what will happen is it'll fill up the connection table, and then the users will be blocked off and won't have any way of getting in, whereas the fake, the malicious users or the bots will be taking up all of the connections. Okay, and so the firewalls are not able to detect some forms of the DDoSing attacks, but some HTTP floods that use legitimate sessions. The firewalls are also not able to determine that this is an attack and able to deny all malicious attacks, but instead we'll have to look at them individually. You can have firewalls that follow specific rules to make sure that the DDoSing attacks don't come through, but this is still not enough. So basically, whenever the whenever it's filled up, the firewall can't say, okay, we're getting a bunch of attacks at once, a bunch of sends at once. I know that this is an attack, I will stop it. It doesn't understand that, so it has to go through individually and see that, okay, this is not a real user, this is not a real user, this is not a real user. And that takes way too much time. That's why this is not a good first line of defense in the first place. So what are the mitigation stages? So now that we know the different types of attacks and that the firewall isn't good enough, so how do we do this? So detect it. That's the first thing that we need to do. Find when the flow of traffic is not how it normally is. So normally DDoSing attacks will have a spike in the flow of traffic, which means that you'll understand that, okay, something weird's going on. So then what do? Well, then you reroute it to somewhere else to filter it. So rerouting it is the next step. Then you will filter it, making sure you filter the real users from the malicious ones. And we'll talk about later how you filter through these type of users. And then you want to analyze it. Check all the information that was gathered from the attack to better prepare for the next one. So maybe you found out something from this attack that didn't happen last time. So now you know, okay, we need to analyze this for next time and have it ready so that something like that won't happen and slip us up. So DNS and BGP routing. So the DNS routing, this will make the attack target the IP address of your mitigation provider. So this is what I was talking about. So we don't want it to attack the company itself, but the mitigation provider instead, because they're more suited and more handled to take this type of attack. So the DNS routing only works with application layer attacks, and so it's kind of hard for us because it only lets application layer attacks. It only helps with that. But BGP routing, just like the DNS routing, it can only send all packets to your mitigation provider. But the cool thing about this is that it works with all protocols, so not just the application layer attacks. Then this is network layer mitigation. So when looking at the different ways that they can mitigate the network layer mitigation, there's a couple of ways. So there's scrubbing, which routes all traffic through a security service, then finds malicious network packets, then lets users go through. So basically, when we're talking about the scrubbing tool, it scrubs through to make sure that no malicious users' packets get through, only the end users do. And this is what we will end up using. But here are two other forms that some people can use. So sinkholing knows malicious IP addresses and does not let them through. Only problem with this is that botnet IPs can pass as a real user. So it'll know that, okay, these are obviously not real users, they're not getting through. But there are plenty of botnets that do have real IPs and that can pass as real users. Then there's the last one, which we will also not be using, but it's null routing. This takes all traffic to an unexisting IP address, but it will also hurt the end user's experience. So it'll also do it to the end users. It just throws them all to the non-existent IP address during the attack. And this is not something we want because we don't want to hurt the end users at all for something that's happening to the company and not to them. So then we have application layer mitigation. These are hard to find because the attacks can fake being a legitimate user. The way we can combat this is to check the HTTPS traffic using some kind of mitigation service. And we'll get into the mitigation service because that's what we're going to honestly be using as a mitigation service. These are just things that we need to know as a company because we need to understand it. So here are just some basic DDoS mitigation rules. So make sure to put your appliances inside of your data center. This is because they are good at application attacks and can find patterns. So unlike the firewall, this can find patterns and be like, okay, we know not to let that happen. Another basic mitigation is to have a service provider offering these mitigation tools like scrubbing services. They send it through the service first to stop online traffic, which we are going to do. Then the last basic way is to maybe have a small web page that you could send out to all your users, maybe through email or something, just so that they can still get the stuff that they need done, but it won't be on the main web page and it won't be as pretty. It'll just be to get whether they need done, maybe to check their accounts on the bank or just something like that, something easy that they can still do. And then the last thing that we have is the NetScout Arbor Cloud DDoS Protection Service. So this will protect against floods. This uses the cloud to stop flooding attacks. Their global scrubbing capacity of 7.6 terabytes per second, and they have 9 scrubbing centers. So this is what we're going to use for the mitigation, but we also still need to understand everything else. Thank you very much, and that is all.